Welcome to my channel, and today I want to share a story that will touch your heart and make you see love in the simplest things. A story about a young man who did not realize the true value of his mother's sacrifices until it was too late. It's a story of regret, understanding, and the quiet power of selfless love that often hides in the ordinary moments of life. So grab a seat, and let's start. For an entire year, Ethan Carter had done something he would regret for the rest of his life. He had thrown away the lunches his mother made for him every single day, without fail. Every morning, without a second thought, he parked his car in the office lot of the towering glass building in downtown Seattle, pulled his briefcase out, and casually tossed the worn takeout box into the trash, before stepping into the lobby to join his co-workers, each carrying their sleek, expensive meals. Ethan's life had changed dramatically since leaving the dusty streets and trailer parks of small-town New Mexico. He was now the first in his family to attend college, the first to leave the narrow lanes and broken fences behind, and now he earned more money than his parents could have ever imagined. Yet he carried a shame that was harder to swallow than any paycheck. His mornings blurred together, alarm clocks, dress shirts, the hum of his car engine. But back home, his mother, Linda Carter, had been up since before sunrise, moving carefully around the cramped kitchen in their small trailer, boiling rice, steaming vegetables, cooking chicken, or occasionally a small piece of beef and pressing it into an old plastic takeout box, wrapping it in a crumpled plastic bag that had seen better days. She never complained about waking up so early or skipping breakfast herself. She simply looked at Ethan, her son, who she had raised with tireless love and sacrifice, and said, "Baby, eat well, don't go hungry." Her voice soft but filled with a warmth that could light up the darkest winter morning. And Ethan, in his youthful arrogance and embarrassment, scowled at the smell, the modest portions, the reminder that he came from somewhere small and insignificant, somewhere he was desperate to leave behind. At work, when his colleagues peeked curiously into his humble lunchbox, Ethan's face would flush with discomfort. So he did what he thought was necessary to maintain his image. He spent 20 or more on a petite salad or a packaged sandwich, pretending to savor it while secretly longing for the taste of something more elaborate, something grown up, something that would make him look successful. But every time he discarded her food, he discarded a piece of her love, her care, her selfless devotion, though at the time, he didn't realize it. Then, life had a way of delivering truths in the harshest forms. His mother, Linda, died suddenly from a heart condition, leaving Ethan in a world that felt hollow and cold. Her funeral was a blur of sorrow, distant relatives, and whispers that carried like a haunting melody. Yet amidst the grief, he couldn't shake the image of the lunches he had thrown away, the countless mornings he had refused the gift of her love. During the quiet days after the funeral, while sorting through the few belongings she had left behind, Ethan found a small, worn, blue notebook tucked carefully by her bedside. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary list of expenses, mundane and forgettable. But the moment he opened it, page after page revealed a story that would break him entirely. Monday, lunch for Ethan $3, didn't buy heart medicine today. Wednesday, chicken and vegetables $4, walked home to save bus fare. Friday, bought a small piece of beef $5, only had a cup of milk for lunch today. For him, it's all worth it. Line after line, it was not a budget book. It was a record of a mother's sacrifice. Her health spent her comfort given away silently day after day, all for the boy who had rejected her gift time and time again. Ethan's knees buckled, and he sank to the floor, tears streaming uncontrollably, his chest heaving with the unbearable weight of guilt. In that moment, he understood that the lunches were never about food. They were about love, about devotion, about a willingness to trade her own well-being for the happiness and health of her child. Every discarded meal had been a silent rejection of her sacrifices, and the realization cut deeper than any pain he had ever known. In the quiet of her empty bedroom, Ethan held the blue notebook to his chest, understanding too late that love sometimes hides in the simplest gestures. A wrinkled plastic bag, the steam rising from rice at 4:30 in the morning, a hand pressing a lunchbox into yours, with no expectation beyond your well-being. It was a lesson that came with grief, with remorse, with the aching knowledge that some sacrifices are too profound to ever repay, that some love is too vast to measure. And Ethan vowed as he sat on that cold floor sobbing in a world without his mother, that he would carry her memory with him, honor her sacrifices, and never again take the quiet, unassuming gifts of love for granted. Though he knew the chance to apologize, to taste those meals, to say thank you had vanished forever. As the days passed after Linda's funeral, Ethan wandered through the quiet trailer that had once felt so small and confining, but now seemed impossibly vast, empty, and unbearably silent. Every corner reminded him of her favorite mug still sitting on the counter, the faint smell of cinnamon lingering on a cutting board she had used for years, the chair she always sat in while peeling vegetables or folding laundry, humming softly to herself. He found scraps of notes she had left around the house, reminders to pay a bill or take the trash out, but even in those small, mundane messages, there was a quiet devotion, a life built around the well-being of others rather than herself. He remembered waking up at 6 a.m., the trailer dark, except for the soft glow of the kitchen light, hearing her stirring quietly, and how she had always smiled at him, a smile that never demanded, but always gave. He thought about the times he had slammed the door, frustrated at being trapped in a small town, thinking that everything she did was holding him back instead of lifting him forward. He thought about the birthday parties she had planned, the tiny gifts she had painstakingly wrapped with care, the way she would stay up late sewing costumes for school plays or gluing together science fair projects, always whispering encouragement, even when he had rolled his eyes or complained about embarrassment. And now, staring at her empty bedroom, he realized how much of her life had been given away quietly, without recognition, without a hint of resentment, all for him. Ethan found himself sitting for hours at the kitchen table, the blue notebook open in front of him, reading and rereading the lines that catalogued her sacrifices in painstaking detail. Monday, lunch for Ethan, $3. Didn't buy heart medicine today. Wednesday, chicken and vegetables, $4. Walked home to save bus fare. Friday, bought a small piece of beef, $5. Only had a cup of milk for lunch today. For him, it's all worth it. He saw the careful accounting of her health and her exhaustion, how she skipped her own meals to make sure he had enough, how she walked instead of taking the bus to save money, how she sacrificed medication so that he could have a better life. And with each line, each notation, his guilt grew until it felt like a physical weight pressing down on his chest, a heaviness he could not shake. Ethan began to remember the moments he had ignored her, mocked her simple cooking in the cafeteria, tossed her lunches in the trash without a thought, and felt an ache so sharp it took his breath away. He realized that he had not been rejecting mere food. He had been rejecting her love, her devotion, her silent heroism. And now that she was gone, there was nothing he could do to reclaim it. The memories of her patience flooded back. The afternoons she spent helping him with homework, explaining fractions and sentences with a gentle smile. The nights she stayed awake when he was sick, rubbing his forehead, making sure he was warm and comfortable. The mornings when she would leave a note in his lunchbox with a small message of encouragement or a reminder to wear his jacket. He had laughed at those notes as a teenager, thinking them silly, childish, unnecessary. But now they haunted him. He imagined going back to those moments, telling her thank you, hugging her tight, savoring the warmth of her presence, and it tore at him that he could never do so. Every object in the trailer seemed to speak to him now. The worn-out apron hanging by the sink, the empty spice jars lined neatly on the shelf, the small collection of cookbooks she had bought second-hand to stretch every dollar. Each of these mundane items, once ignored, now radiated significance, each a testament to a life lived selflessly, a life spent building comfort and opportunity for someone else at the cost of her own ease, her own health, her own happiness. Ethan began to cry again, softly at first, then louder, as the flood of grief and regret and understanding overwhelmed him. He thought of the countless mornings he had walked away from her lunches, from her care, from the very essence of her love. And the tears fell freely, unrelenting, bitter, and full of sorrow. He realized that her love had been a quiet, constant presence, one that never demanded recognition, but that shaped him profoundly, whether he had known it or not. And in that realization, Ethan made a silent promise. That he would never take love for granted again, that he would honor her memory in the choices he made, in the way he treated others, in the way he carried the lessons she had taught without words, simply through her life, through her actions, through the immeasurable, invisible sacrifices of a mother who had given everything without asking for anything in return. He would carry her legacy with him, not as guilt, but as guidance, a reminder that the smallest gestures can contain the greatest love, and that even in the simplest lunchbox, there can be an entire lifetime of devotion, hidden, waiting for the moment one finally understands. In the weeks that followed, Ethan found himself unable to return to his normal routine. The polished glass and steel offices of Seattle now seeming cold and meaningless compared to the warmth he had taken for granted back home. Each day at work, the chatter of colleagues, the clatter of keyboards, the smell of overpriced coffee, all reminded him of how disconnected he had become from the person who had shaped his earliest days. He began carrying a small notebook of his own, not to tally expenses, but to record memories, snippets of his mother's life, lessons she had taught, moments he could no longer relive except through recollection. He remembered her humming softly while she scrubbed dishes, the way her hair caught the morning light streaming through the kitchen window, the faint creak of the floorboards as she moved through the trailer. Always mindful not to wake him too early, he thought of how she had always encouraged him to dream beyond the narrow confines of their town, how she had scrimped and saved to make sure he could attend the college he longed for, how she had rejoiced quietly whenever he received good grades, and silently mourned whenever he struggled, never showing disappointment, only gentle guidance and unwavering belief in him. Ethan's guilt pressed on him like a living weight. But slowly, it transformed into something else. A determination to honor her memory in a way that mattered. A need to live a life that reflected the depth of her love. He started volunteering at a local community kitchen on weekends, handing out meals to people who reminded him of the small-town families he had left behind, listening to their stories, and finding in their smiles a reflection of the warmth his mother had given him. He began to reconnect with his younger cousin, Marcus, who was still in Albuquerque, sharing with him lessons about responsibility, hard work, and the quiet power of selfless love, passing on the wisdom his mother had instilled in him. Every action he took, every choice he made, carried her presence. He bought groceries for neighbors in need, left notes of encouragement for co-workers, treated strangers with patience, and slowly, the emptiness he had felt since her death began to ease, replaced by a sense of purpose, rooted in love and remembrance. And yet, every night, he would return to the blue notebook, tracing the faded ink of her careful accounting. Tears forming as he read each entry. Monday, lunch for Ethan, $3. Didn't buy heart medicine today. Wednesday, chicken and vegetables, $4. Walked home to save bus fare. Friday, bought a small piece of beef, $5. Only had a cup of milk for lunch today. For him, it's all worth it. Each line reminded him of the cost of love, the sacrifices made silently and faithfully. And he realized that while he could never repay her, he could honor her memory by living with gratitude, compassion, and a recognition of the hidden labor of love that shaped his life. One evening, as the sun set behind the Seattle skyline, casting golden light through his apartment window, Ethan prepared a simple meal for himself, something he would have once scorned, a small portion of rice, steamed vegetables, and a piece of chicken. And he sat down at his kitchen table, holding the meal carefully in his hands. As he ate slowly, savoring every bite, he whispered a quiet thank you to his mother, a gratitude he had been unable to express in life. The act was small, ordinary, yet monumental in its significance. It was a tangible acknowledgement of all she had given, all she had sacrificed, and all the love that had gone unnoticed for so long. In that moment, he understood that love is often hidden in the mundane, revealed only when one pauses to see it, only when one finally realizes that the simplest gestures, the wrapping of a plastic bag, the boiling of a pot of rice, the pressing of a lunchbox into small hands, can contain an entire universe of devotion. And as he finished the meal, Ethan felt a quiet peace settle over him, a sense of connection to the mother he had lost, a resolve to carry her legacy forward in the way he lived, in the way he loved, and in the way he remembered, knowing that while he could never reclaim the lost lunches, he could honor their meaning and allow her love to guide every step of the life she had worked so hard to build for him. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan found himself revisiting the small details of his childhood with a clarity that surprised him. Memories that had once seemed ordinary now revealed themselves as extraordinary in their quiet devotion. He remembered the winters in Albuquerque, when the wind howled outside the trailer and frost painted intricate patterns on the windows, and how Linda had stayed awake late into the night, sewing patches on his worn jackets, making sure he would not freeze during the walk to school, whispering to herself as she worked, never once asking for recognition or thanks. He remembered her hands, roughened from years of work, yet gentle whenever they touched him. The smell of soap and cinnamon that always lingered on her skin, and the way her eyes would sparkle whenever he achieved something, even the smallest triumph. He recalled the evenings she had spent sitting beside him, helping him practice his writing, guiding his hand as he formed letters with care, her patience unending even when he grew frustrated and tossed his pencil across the table. Ethan realized that all these small, seemingly insignificant moments had been the foundation of his life, the quiet scaffolding of love that had allowed him to reach heights he could never have imagined on his own. And yet, for all these years, he had been blind to their meaning, too focused on appearances, too embarrassed by simplicity, too eager to distance himself from the place and people he had once called home. He thought of the lunches, the simple steaming rice, the small piece of meat, the vegetables boiled just enough to retain their texture, packed with care in a battered takeout box, and he understood now that they were not just food. They were daily affirmations of love, sacrifices made quietly, deliberately, without expectation, all so that he could grow, thrive, and dream. Ethan remembered the day he left for college, how he had hugged his mother tightly at the bus station, tears brimming in his eyes, and how she had smiled, wiped a tear from his cheek, and told him to chase his dreams. Her words gentle but unwavering, her faith in him absolute. He had left with a sense of excitement and independence, thinking that his mother's life was meant to stay behind in the past, and he had carried that illusion for years, blind to the depth of her devotion, blind to the countless small sacrifices that had enabled him to pursue a life far beyond the trailer park and dusty streets he had once despised. Sitting now in his quiet apartment in Seattle, Ethan could almost see her in the kitchen, moving with care and patience, humming softly, her life a quiet testament to endurance and love. He thought of the blue notebook again, the record of her choices, her small denials of comfort and care to ensure that he was safe, nourished, and encouraged. And he wept anew, not just for the pain of loss, but for the years of blindness, for the lunches discarded, for the love he had failed to recognize in time. Each memory was a knife and a balm at once, cutting into the guilt, yet soothing the ache by showing him the depth of her heart. And in that space, he began to make plans, not just for remembrance, but for action, for honoring her life in concrete ways. He started to reach out to old neighbors and family friends, learning more about the quiet struggles she had endured, the ways she had helped others, even when she had so little herself. And each story deepened his awe and his understanding. He began writing letters to people she had once touched, sharing his gratitude on her behalf, feeling a connection that transcended her absence. And slowly, the sharp edge of regret softened into a bittersweet determination to live a life that reflected the principles she had embodied. Ethan also made a conscious choice to remember every meal, every act of care, every moment of patience as sacred, and he promised himself that no act of love, no matter how small or ordinary it might appear, would go unnoticed in his life again. And in the stillness of the night, with the city lights of Seattle casting a warm glow through his window, he whispered to her memory, imagining her presence in the soft hum of the apartment, in the quiet rhythm of his own heartbeat, in the steam rising from a simple, home-cooked meal he now cherished with reverence. Ethan began to change the way he lived in subtle but meaningful ways, carrying the lessons of his mother Linda into every corner of his daily life, finding small opportunities to honor the quiet acts of love she had shown him and to extend them to others. And it was in these small, deliberate choices that he felt closest to her spirit. He volunteered at shelters and community kitchens, not simply handing out meals, but taking the time to sit with the people he served, listening to their stories, learning their names, asking about their lives, offering encouragement, and seeing in them the same human dignity his mother had always recognized in everyone around her. He started cooking at home, preparing simple, nourishing meals with care, imagining that she was standing beside him, watching over his shoulder, offering guidance with her patient hands, and each time he stirred the pot or chopped vegetables, he remembered the countless mornings she had done the same for him, without complaint, without recognition, without expectation. He reconnected with family members he had neglected, visiting his grandparents, calling his cousins, sending letters to people who had known his mother, sharing stories about her strength, her resilience, her quiet generosity. And he realized that by keeping her memory alive, he was also reclaiming the part of himself that he had once tried to erase, the part of him rooted in love, sacrifice, and humble beginnings. Ethan also began to notice the small gestures of care in his own life. The barista who remembered his order, the neighbor who checked on him when it rained, the friend who always called to ask how he was doing. And he learned to respond with gratitude and attentiveness, recognizing that love often arrives in quiet, unassuming forms, just as his mother's had. At work, he became more compassionate with colleagues, offering assistance without seeking credit, listening with genuine interest, and mentoring younger employees who reminded him of himself, nervous and ambitious, trying to navigate a world that often felt bigger than he was, all while carrying the wisdom and patience he had inherited from his mother. On weekends, he began to organize small community events, inviting neighbors and friends to share meals, to cook together, to talk and laugh, fostering the same sense of connection and care that had filled his childhood trailer, imagining Linda's presence in every corner, smiling at the gatherings, quietly approving. And yet, even amidst these actions, the shadow of regret remained a reminder of the lunches he had thrown away, the opportunities to express gratitude he had squandered, the years of blindness that could never be recovered. And he faced that guilt, honestly allowing it to guide him toward empathy, toward generosity, toward a life that acknowledged the quiet, immeasurable value of selfless love. He wrote letters to his mother, addressed to no one but himself, and to her memory, pouring out apologies and gratitude, recounting the ways he was attempting to honor her, detailing the meals he had prepared, the people he had helped, the kindnesses he had extended, and in this ritual he found a semblance of peace, a channel through which his grief could be transformed into purpose. Ethan also began documenting the stories of his own life, capturing the lessons he had learned, the sacrifices his mother had made, and the ways in which love often hides in ordinary, everyday acts, so that he could one day pass them on, ensuring that Linda's legacy would continue not just through him, but through the generations that followed, a testament to the enduring power of a mother's devotion. And each night, as he prepared a modest dinner for himself, a plate of rice, vegetables, and a small portion of chicken, he whispered a soft thank you to the woman who had given everything, without asking for anything in return, savoring each bite as a sacred acknowledgement of her sacrifices, feeling her presence in the warmth of the meal, the gentle rhythm of his life, and the steady beat of his heart that had been shaped, nurtured, and carried forward by the depth of a love he had once taken for granted, but now understood with every fiber of his being. Ethan found himself drifting back to the afternoons of his teenage years, sitting in the corner of the kitchen while Linda prepared dinner, her hands moving with a rhythm that seemed almost ritualistic, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, and arranging food on plates with a precision born of care, her face calm, serene, yet etched with lines of exhaustion and quiet worry. And he remembered how he had once complained about the monotony of her cooking. The same vegetables over and over, the rice that steamed too slowly, never realizing that each meal was a gift, a testament to her determination to give him stability, nourishment, and love, even when there was barely enough for herself. He remembered high school mornings when she would wake him before dawn, dragging herself from the bed with aching joints, her hair disheveled, yet smiling as she packed his lunch in that same battered plastic takeout box, slipping in a note of encouragement or a small candy bar. She had bought, secretly insisting that he take it with him, and how he had snatched the box from her hands impatiently, embarrassed by its plainness, by the smell, by the reminder that he was different from the kids at school, a product of a humble life he wished to escape. And yet, she had never scolded him, never demanded that he eat it, only told him with quiet firmness to take care of yourself, baby, don't go hungry. And he now realized how much courage and love it took for her to stand there day after day, sacrificing sleep, food, comfort, and health just to ensure he had what he needed to thrive. He remembered the times she had gone without, so he could have what he wanted. The small treats he begged for at the corner store, the new shoes for school, the books he needed for his studies. And how she had smiled when he received them, hiding her own disappointment and fatigue behind a mask of contentment, never showing that she had given up her own comforts so he could be happy, so he could succeed. Ethan thought of his first college acceptance letter, how he had rushed home to show her, expecting her to burst with pride, and instead found her standing quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the letter, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall, whispering that she was proud, that he would do great things, and how he had hugged her awkwardly, preoccupied with excitement and ambition, barely aware of the depth of her emotions, barely noticing the sleepless nights and missed meals that had paved the way for this achievement. He remembered the tiny arguments they had had, the moments of teenage rebellion, the slamming doors, the muttered complaints, and how she had never retaliated with anger, only patience, teaching him through example that love could be steadfast, even in the face of frustration and misunderstanding. Each memory pressed on him now with the weight of revelation, teaching him that every discarded lunch, every ignored note, every moment of impatience he had shown as a teenager had been a rejection of her immense, quiet love. A love that had been present in every meal, every touch, every word of encouragement, every sleepless night. And he realized how blind he had been, how wrapped up he had been in appearances and pride, too ignorant to see the extraordinary care in the ordinary, too embarrassed to accept the simplest demonstration of devotion. Sitting in his apartment in Seattle, the city buzzing beyond his window, Ethan felt a surge of grief that was intertwined with awe, a recognition that his mother's life had been a series of miracles enacted through daily acts of sacrifice, patience, and unwavering love. And he vowed that from this day forward, he would live in a way that reflected her example, that he would honor her memory not just in quiet moments, but in the entirety of his life, extending the lessons of humility, care, and unconditional love to all who crossed his path, making sure that her devotion would not be forgotten, that it would ripple outward in acts of kindness, generosity, and attention to the hidden struggles and silent sacrifices of others, and that he would never again let a single gesture of love, no matter how small, pass unnoticed or unappreciated. As Ethan navigated his adult life in Seattle, he began to see the lessons his mother, Linda, had taught him, manifesting in unexpected ways, realizing that the values she had instilled, resilience, patience, humility, and selfless love, were not only shaping his character but also influencing the people around him, and he became determined to live intentionally, aware of the invisible threads of care and sacrifice that connected every moment of his life to hers. At work, he approached his colleagues differently, noticing when someone needed support or encouragement, offering a helping hand or a kind word without expecting anything in return, just as Linda had always done. And he began mentoring younger employees, guiding them not only in their careers but in their approach to life, teaching them the quiet power of compassion and the importance of noticing the small acts of kindness that often go unrecognized. He also started to pay attention to the small details of life at home, preparing meals with care, maintaining a tidy apartment, creating an environment where comfort and thoughtfulness were constant, reflecting the warmth and stability he had once taken for granted in his mother's trailer. And he felt her presence in each decision, as though she were guiding him with the same steady hand she had always used to guide his childhood. On weekends, he volunteered at food banks and shelters, cooking meals and serving people with patience, listening to their stories and offering empathy. And he found in these acts of service a connection to the lessons of his youth, to the sacrifices his mother had made to ensure that he never went hungry or lacked opportunity. And he began to see the ripple effect of care and attention, understanding that even the smallest acts of generosity could profoundly impact someone's life. Ethan also began documenting his experiences, writing down not only the stories of his mother's sacrifices, but also the ways he was now trying to live a life that honored her memory. And he imagined one day sharing these writings with his own children, should he have them, so that they could understand the quiet, powerful love that had shaped his life, and the importance of noticing and cherishing the invisible labor of those who care for them. He reflected on the countless lunches he had thrown away in his youth, each one a small but meaningful testament to his mother's devotion, and though the regret remained, it no longer paralyzed him. Instead, it fueled his desire to live a life worthy of her sacrifices, to transform grief into purpose, and to allow her lessons to guide every choice he made, from the way he treated strangers to the way he nurtured relationships, to the small daily rituals of care he practiced at home, even in the quiet of his apartment, preparing a modest meal for himself, a plate of rice, vegetables, and chicken, simple yet nourishing. He felt a sense of connection and reverence, imagining Linda's hands in the preparation, her eyes filled with pride, her presence infused in every detail. And he whispered a heartfelt thank you, knowing that while he could never repay her fully, he could honor her legacy by living a life of mindfulness, love, and gratitude. In these moments, he understood that love often hides in the ordinary, in daily routines, in small sacrifices, in meals prepared before dawn, in notes left unspoken, and that recognizing it requires patience, reflection, and an openness to the quiet lessons of those who give selflessly. And he resolved that from that day forward, he would carry the memory of his mother's love into every interaction, every act of kindness, every choice he made, ensuring that her legacy of devotion and sacrifice would continue to shape the world in ways both subtle and profound. As the months passed, Ethan found himself revisiting even earlier memories of his childhood, realizing that Linda's sacrifices had begun long before he had fully understood them, in moments so small and ordinary that he had overlooked their significance until now. And he remembered the rainy afternoons when he had come home from school, soaked to the bone, dragging his backpack behind him. And she had taken off her coat to wrap him in warmth, holding him close, whispering comforting words while drying his hair and pressing a warm cup of cocoa into his hands, all while her own hands were red and chapped from dishwater and cold, her body aching from work she would never complain about. He recalled the nights she had stayed up waiting for him to return from late study sessions or part-time jobs, walking the quiet streets of their small town to make sure he arrived safely, and how she had always feigned sleep when he arrived, greeting him with a tired smile, a soft, "Welcome home, baby," masking the exhaustion she had endured for the sake of his safety and comfort. Ethan thought of the countless mornings he had rushed out of the trailer, impatient with her careful instructions, frustrated by the simplicity of breakfast and lunch, blind to the love that infused every gesture. And he realized that her life had been a series of small miracles, enacted through daily acts of selflessness, a devotion so profound that it had gone unnoticed because it was so consistent, so natural, so ingrained in the rhythm of their lives that he had assumed it was ordinary, when in truth it had been extraordinary. He remembered the times she had hidden her own hunger to make sure he had enough, the small meals she had skipped, the second-hand clothes she had patched and repaired so he could have clean, presentable clothing, the long walks she had taken to save bus fare, the careful budgeting she had done to ensure he could pursue his education, and all of it struck him now with the force of revelation, a weight of love so immense that he felt both humbled and shattered, understanding for the first time the full extent of her devotion. These memories became a compass for him, guiding the way he approached life, teaching him to notice the small, ordinary sacrifices others made and to respond with gratitude, compassion, and action rather than indifference. Ethan began writing letters to Linda as though she were still there, confessing his past mistakes, expressing the gratitude he had been too blind to offer in life, recounting the ways he was honoring her memory through his actions. And in these letters, he found a strange solace, a bridge between the boy who had been careless and the man he was becoming, a reminder that while some opportunities were lost forever, love could still be recognized, remembered, and extended through living a life reflective of her example. He began mentoring young people from backgrounds similar to his own, guiding them not only academically or professionally, but teaching them the quiet, invisible lessons of humility, patience, and selfless love, echoing the values his mother had instilled in him without needing to say a word. And he saw the impact of this guidance ripple outward, realizing that one person's sacrifices could shape not just a single life, but many, if the lessons were carried forward with intention. Ethan also began hosting small gatherings for family and friends, simple meals prepared with care, where stories were shared, laughter flowed freely, and the sense of warmth and belonging his mother had cultivated in the trailer seemed to live on, present in every conversation, every shared plate, every moment of attentiveness. And he realized that through these acts, he was recreating the love she had given him, honoring it through community, connection, and care. And in quiet moments when he prepared his own modest meals, a bowl of rice, vegetables, and chicken, a reflection of the lunches he had once scorned, he paused to reflect on the immense love that had gone into every bite he had once rejected, whispering thanks and imagining her watching over him, her presence woven into the aroma, the warmth, and the comfort of the food. Understanding finally that love is often hidden in the ordinary, revealed only when one stops to see it, and that the lessons of a lifetime could be found in a simple lunchbox, in a mother's patience, and in the quiet sacrifice that shapes lives in ways that may only be understood decades later. As the years passed, Ethan found that grief, though still present, had transformed into a quiet, guiding presence, a reminder of Linda's unwavering love and the lessons she had instilled through her sacrifices, and he began to understand that the lunches he had once thrown away, the notes he had ignored, and the moments of impatience he had shown were not just mistakes, but teachers of a profound truth. That love is often hidden in the ordinary, revealed only when one stops to notice, and its value is measured not in recognition, but in the depth of commitment and selflessness behind it. He began to live deliberately, approaching each day with mindfulness and gratitude, noticing the small acts of kindness others offered, responding with care, and carrying forward the legacy of a mother whose quiet devotion had shaped him more than he had ever realized. And he felt a sense of purpose in helping others, mentoring young people, volunteering at shelters, and fostering a sense of community in ways that echoed the values Linda had lived by. He reflected on the trajectory of his life, from the boy embarrassed by his humble beginnings and his mother's simple lunches, to the man who now understood the weight and beauty of those sacrifices. And he realized that every choice he made from that point on could honor her memory, ensuring that her love continued to ripple outward through his actions, words, and the care he showed to others. Ethan began hosting regular family dinners, simple meals shared with laughter and conversation, where he encouraged storytelling, where the small victories and quiet struggles of each person were recognized, and he found in these gatherings a sense of connection that mirrored the warmth and devotion of the trailer kitchen he had once taken for granted, and he imagined his mother smiling at the table, content that her lessons had taken root in him, that her love had endured. One evening, as he prepared a modest dinner for himself, he placed the blue notebook beside his plate, tracing the faded ink with his fingers, remembering the meticulous records of sacrifice, the skipped meals, the denied comforts, the long walks and careful budgeting, and he whispered a heartfelt thank you, feeling a surge of love and recognition. He had been too blind to offer in life, acknowledging that, though he could never repay her, he could honor her through the way he lived, through the care he extended to others, and through the legacy of love he now carried within him. He reflected on the countless mornings he had scorned her lunches, the arrogance and impatience of youth. And he forgave himself, not by forgetting, but by committing to live differently, by cherishing every act of care, and by teaching others to notice and appreciate the hidden sacrifices that shape lives in ways unseen yet profound. And in that quiet apartment, the steam rising from a simple, carefully prepared meal, Ethan understood fully that love is often silent, often unnoticed, but never inconsequential, that the greatest lessons are often delivered through humility, patience, and daily acts of devotion, and that the life he now lived, full of gratitude, compassion, and mindfulness, was the truest form of repayment a son could give to a mother who had given everything for him without expectation. And as he took his first bite, he smiled through tears, feeling Linda's presence in every flavor, every aroma, every memory, and finally he felt whole, connected, and ready to carry her legacy forward for the rest of his life. In the months and years that followed, Ethan Carter carried his mother's lessons into every aspect of his life, allowing the quiet, steady love of Linda to shape his decisions, relationships, and purpose. And he discovered that honoring her sacrifices was not about grand gestures or public recognition, but about living with awareness, compassion, and gratitude in each ordinary moment. From the way he prepared meals, to the way he treated strangers, colleagues, friends, and family, always noticing the small acts of love around him and responding in kind, ensuring that nothing precious went unrecognized and nothing selfless went unappreciated. He revisited Albuquerque occasionally, walking the streets of his childhood with a sense of reverence, remembering the worn trailer, the tiny kitchen where his mother had labored silently, the meals she had prepared, the notes she had left, the warmth she had cultivated through patience and devotion. And he realized that every hardship she had endured, every compromise she had made, every ounce of her energy given for him, had become the foundation of the life he now lived, a life full of gratitude and intention. Ethan documented her story, writing down the moments of sacrifice, the acts of love, and the hidden heroism that had shaped him, creating a record not for accolades, but for understanding, so that future generations could learn the depth of devotion that often hides in the ordinary, the power of consistent, quiet love, and the importance of recognizing it before it is gone. He shared these stories with young people he mentored, with family and friends, with strangers who needed guidance, and he saw the lessons ripple outward, realizing that the love his mother had given him, once taken for granted, once ignored, was now living on in countless other lives, a legacy of devotion, care, and selfless generosity. Even the simple act of preparing a modest meal became sacred, a way to honor the lunches he had once thrown away. And every bite he took was a silent acknowledgement of the sacrifices she had made, the nights she had stayed awake, the meals she had skipped, the careful budgeting, the endless patience, and the unconditional love that had gone into every gesture, every word, every action. And in these moments, as he sat quietly at his table, the blue notebook resting nearby, the memories flowing through him, Ethan felt a profound sense of connection to Linda, a love that transcended death, a presence that guided him with every choice, every act of kindness, every effort to nurture others, and he understood fully that the greatest legacy one can leave is not wealth, recognition, or power, but the depth of love and care one instills in those who follow, the quiet, invisible threads that shape lives in ways that endure long after one is gone. And he smiled through tears, feeling her spirit in the warmth of a simple meal, in the laughter of family, in the lives he touched, and at last he was at peace, carrying forward the gift she had given him in every step, every choice, every heartbeat of the life he now lived. If you still have the chance to be with your parents or someone who has sacrificed for you, don't wait. Love is often hidden in the smallest gestures, in meals prepared before dawn, in quiet words of encouragement, in sacrifices made without asking for anything in return. These acts may seem ordinary, but they shape our lives in ways we often fail to see until it's too late. So take a moment to sit with them, say thank you, and show them your appreciation, because some love can only be understood when it's gone, and some sacrifices are too precious to ever be forgotten. If you like this story, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share with your friends and family so you don't miss the next powerful story coming your way. Drop a heart in comment, like and subscribe my channel, and visit my channel for more interesting story videos.